So NRC has a great history, as we all know, but you don't go forward by living in the past. So we have to always look at what we're going to be doing. And the key agenda that we're in the middle of right now is to focus for the next 5 to 10 years and try to find ways to create more impact from what we do, line ourselves up in partnership with others to make those impacts come about. We're identifying critical areas for Canada, sort of strategic issues that need to be addressed, and these include things like healthcare costs, environment, natural resource development, the sustainability of our manufacturing economy, and so on. So we're looking at all of those and developing programs now that will hopefully help us address those issues over the next decade.
Excellent. And how do you see the role of science policy community to help you with the vision that you have for NRC?
Well, science policy, of course, is about public intervention in the innovation system. That's what really policy is for, right? It's to make the result different. So one of the things that science policy hopefully will do is improve the understanding of innovation by the people who ultimately have to make decisions that will affect our ability to do the job that has to be done. So that's our government officials, our politicians, business people, researchers, and of course organizations and so on like ourselves. So the more we can understand how the system works and the kinds of interventions that will make it work better, the better off we're going to be. So this is a great thing to see happening.
And along the same line, how do you see a role for science advisory bodies? First of all, do you think that we need more advisory bodies at the federal level? Do we need science advisory bodies at the provincial levels in Canada because of the decentralized system of government?
That's a very good question, and it's not an easy one to answer, frankly. I don't think there's a shortage of advice in Canada. I think where we are limited is in coherent, integrated advice. And mostly what we seem to get is very siloed kind of thinking. So we get advice from the academic community, we get advice from the business community, we get advice from government and so on. But we rarely put it all together. Mm-hmm. And I think for me what's really important is to create the capacity somewhere where we can think about the innovation system more holistically. I think the existing organizations have a role to play in that, but it also takes someone who will kind of knit it together.
Exactly. So we know that Quebec is looking for a chief science advisor, mm-hmm. and there are perhaps some discussions in other provinces that they may want to adopt the same model. Do you think is it helpful for provinces to look for such a chief science advisor or something like that?
Well, again, the challenge is to get, regardless what we do, is to make sure that it's holistic. So, for example, we need people who have some real hands-on experience that's not just theoretical, if I can put it that way, because success in innovation, particularly, not so much maybe in research, but in innovation, does require an understanding of how the system works, and that understanding is ideally got some real-world experience associated with it. One of the challenges that we get is many of the decision makers have grown up in only one part of the system, so they maybe know public policy, but they don't really know business. They maybe know research, but they don't know government. They maybe know business, but they don't know research, and so on. So one of the things that we desperately need are people who bring those things together. And too often what we're seeing, I think, is that policy becomes driven by people who have a vested interest to drive it, but don't necessarily drive it in a way that takes into account all of the issues that are necessary for it to be successful.
That's right. So what do you think in that respect? what do you think about the venues such as CSPC, which aims to bring different stakeholders, as you indicated, from private sector, from academia, from government, all those expertise together and discuss the issues? Do you think this venue is helpful, is necessary to have such an annual forum, inclusive annual forum in science policy issues?
Yeah, I think the idea of an annual forum is a very good one. And I think that if you can keep the quality high, it'll add a great deal to Canada's efforts in this area, and we desperately do need them. So it's an initiative that I certainly think is quite important.
I see. I thank you very much for your time, Dr. McDougall, and looking forward to see you next year's conference.
Yep, thank you. Enjoyed speaking with you today.
Thank you.